Yeah, g'day, Mark here, and welcome back to my wood shop. Now, one of my kids has got a birthday coming up, and she asked for a cutting board. So I thought, cool, what's more YouTube than making some sort of fancy cutting board? So let's get into it. Now, the design of cutting board that I'm going to use is this one found on the internet. I'll leave a link. Sort of looks like tartan or plaid sort of material, and it's going to use 3 different woods: maple, cherry and walnut, which is kind of the classic YouTube sort of selection. Now at this point, the typical woodworking YouTube channel pulls out 3 pieces of beautiful timber about this size, nearly the right thickness and stuff, perfect straight grain walnut, cherry and maple, and starts getting into it. But it's like, where do they get this wood from? Austria is a pretty heavily forested country, and there's all sorts of different trees that grow here, so there shouldn't be any great challenge getting access to those sorts of timber. But I mean, for me, it's also a real price thing. So last week I went into the classified ads looking for walnut, maple and cherry. There were more vendors further over towards the western side of Austria, but that would be 4-5 hours drive each way, so you're up to maybe a 10-hour round trip. But I did find a couple of vendors about an hour and a half from home, one of which had walnut, the other had maple and cherry. So I arranged to go and do a sort of 3-hour round trip to visit both of them. The gentleman who was selling walnut had some amazing timber. You know, this sort of 3-inch thick, 3-meter long slabs about 2 feet wide, similar to what you'd see on Blacktail Woodworking or whatever his channel's called. And each of these slabs was at least a couple of €1,000. My whole budget of wood for this year is about 300. I was kind of hoping to get one slab of 30mm thick by maybe 2 meters long walnut, but even that he was looking more like €300 just for a single slab. I had to end up settling for these 2 very ugly pieces of walnut. I mean, this is basically just firewood, but beggars can't be choosers. I'm hoping to get the wood that I need for the chopping board out of this piece, but probably will have to get into at least a little bit of this one as well. This will be kept for future projects where I'll just use it for a little bit of decoration, but certainly won't be making any solid projects out of walnut, that's for sure. Now when it came to the maple, things were looking a lot better. I actually got 2 very beautifully straight grained pieces about 2 meters long by about, I don't know, 45 centimeters wide. Those are very nice, but too nice to be used for a cutting board. I also got maybe 6 other pieces like this of various different sizes. This will definitely be good enough to get the cutting board material out of. And then finally for the cherry, I bought 2 of these boards, very nicely dried. There's been a bit of insect attack to the sapwood around the edge. You can see the holes and stuff in that, but the main timber looks reasonably decent, although once again rather knotty, quite a few cracks and stuff in it. Certainly not the greatest timber I've ever bought. So that was the haul. 3 hours driving on a super hot day, $300, and I'm very happy with the quality of the maple I got. The 2 best bits are at the bottom. The cherry less so, and very disappointed with what I ended up with as walnut. So while it'd be nice to get stuck into just cutting my final pieces of timber to size, the first thing I'm going to need to do is try and mill out the bits that I can actually use. Looking here, this is all sapwood through here, so that's not going to be much use to me. I'll have to have a bit of a play with that knot, see if I can get anything useful around that knot, but otherwise it looks like the decent wood's going to be roughly through about there. Cut off the sapwood here, see what I can get out of it. Now the design that I found on the internet was for a pretty enormous cutting board. When looking at it, the wood was really for at least 2 cutting boards. Yeah, and it was just too big to fit into a European apartment kitchen. So I've just run through the numbers to design a cutting board that'll end up about 10 inches by 14 inches. Well, I got most of the wood milled, but the thin strips of walnut, I ended up with a fair bit of reject. Sort of, either they had cracks in them, worm going through them, splits going through them. So I'll have to chop a piece out of my big board and make a few more thin strips. Right, well, after making more scrap, more sawdust than parts, I'm at the point now where I can start a glue up. I'm using waterproof glue. It's probably easiest if I do this in groups of same thickness, isn't it? Right, now the glue's dried on those two boards, I have to prep them so that I can make slices and do end grain glue up. So they need to sit nice and accurately together. Now, if I was a smarter person than I am, I could have made these glue ups in two pieces so that they would fit across my planer. But like this, it's too wide. So I guess I'll have to hand plane them. Right, with those now done, I just clean up one edge and then I can start cutting strips off them. Now I'm guessing that this is going to be a pretty difficult glue up because it's all going to want to swim around, but you have to keep these lines perfectly straight. Well, let's get started. Memory card full just when I was doing the major glue up. Now comes the scariest part. To be able to put in the final strips of light wood, the maple, I need to cut this thing up again. That's kind of scary after all the work I've put into it. I can reset the fence and cut all the others. Right, now the last layup is to glue in these strips. Someone smarter than me would have made those the final thickness of the material and not the thickness of those stripes. I think it's the third set of these I've cut that are wrong. Oh well, let's make some more. Right, smooth this off again for the next cut. Right, that's better. I'll just glue these up into one piece first so that I don't end up with any unsightly gaps when I glue the whole thing together and it all wants to move around. Right, those edges are going to need a clean up before I can start finishing. This has actually ended up a little shorter than I expected. I think the mistake was I failed to remove the kerfs for those 5 cuts. So that's reduced the length by over ½ an inch or so. Now before I clog up a whole bunch of sandpaper, I'll just try and scrape off as much of the excess glue as I can. Now being end grain, I can't put this through the thicknesser, plus it wouldn't fit anyway. I can't hand plane it well, so it needs to be sanded. Now especially the first bit, getting all this glue off, gonna need to be done with the belt sander. But last time I used a belt sander, yeah. So let's fix that first. Right, so let's shorten this cable. Okay, they even put ferrules on it, that's nice. I wonder what percentage of power tools end up getting scrapped for something as minor as that. Okay, I've got one minor little gap here, so I'll just try and stuff a bit of sawdust down there and then super glue, but otherwise it's the only significant gap on the upper surface. Right, with that now flattened out, I'll switch to the orbital sander and I'll start with piece 60 and go up through the grits. That first pass takes the longest because I've got to get out all of the heavy scratches from the band sander. Once I've got all those out, the next passes should go a bit quicker. Now before I complete the finishing, I just want to put a couple of grab handles on the edge and round over the edges. But at some stage I should probably make up a proper router table setup, because at the moment I just have to bodge it doing fences with clamps and stuff. Now this part's a bit too thin, but I'll just use it just to give it a quick try out and see whether this is going to roughly work. Okay, it's a bit too short of course because this piece is too long, but otherwise seems to make a nice job on the one side. Not being guided on the other side, I did get a bit of an error there, but that's just test piece. Wait a minute, that's asymmetric. I was supposed to go to that line, which works on the back towards the back, but at the front I'm 20 millimeters too short, and that's because the stop is set up off this block, but it was supposed to be set up off both these blocks. So let's just put in a new stop block further out. Okay, that's more like it. It's quite difficult to remove the router burn marks. I couldn't get them out completely. And because the distance to the finger grooves is not that much, I think trying to use this radius would be just way too much. In fact, I don't even think it'll work. So instead I'll just sand a bit of radius into the edges. Right now I'm just going to go up through the sandpaper grades up to like 400 and make sure this is all nice and smooth. And between each grit of sandpaper I'll just use a little bit of water to raise the grain. Right, for the finishing I've bought this stuff. It's designed for it. This is exactly the sort of kitchen tops and stuff. It's food safe. Yeah, I'm not sure if it says exactly what oils is mixed up out of, but hey, that'll do it. Since it's a present, I better first sign off on it, shouldn't I? This is just the underside. Right, well, it's 3 days later, and the board's had 3 good soakings of this oil. By the way, I'll leave a link to this for European viewers. I don't think this stuff's available in the States. You have to try something else. I'm not sponsored by Bondex. This just happens to be what's available in the local hardware store. Now, to seal the oil in the surface, I'm going to switch to this product. It's just a wax-based one. Make sure I give this a good shake first. Right, so what have I learnt with doing this project? The first thing is that when making up these pieces, you really want to have a good plan of how to go about it so that you make sure you cut all of the parts to the same thickness and the same setup. I had a few mistakes where I then had to later go back, reset up a saw and cut some new wood. And that's when errors creep in and you don't have quite the same dimensions. And slight errors in dimension, of course, build up over time. The next thing I realized, I needed to be more careful about how I actually stack the wood so that I end up with all the grain kind of oriented. Like here we've got bits going in this direction and then you've got bits going in the other direction. It's a chopping board, so it probably doesn't matter, but I really should learn to pay more attention to how the grain is being laid out on these kind of pieces so that at the end it's more homogeneous. I guess the third thing I learned was that not only do I need to cut the material to the same width and thickness, but for something like this I should probably also cut it to the same length in one go, so then when I need to do the glue up, you've got less chance of it slipping. You can see here there's about 1 millimeter of slippage there, so get a little bit of an offset, and that would probably have been avoided had I been a little more careful with the length of parts before the glue up, and maybe putting some sort of a stop block or something against them to get them all nicely aligned. Now comes the Karate Kid bit, you know, wax on, wax off. I'll probably give this a few layers of wax over the next few days. Well, because this is a present, let's get it wrapped. Right, well, alone from the quality of the packaging, everyone's going to know it's from Dad. Happy birthday to you, happy birthday to you.
Wow.
Thanks a lot for watching. I'll see you next time.